If you had asked me a year ago what my life would look like at 27, I would have told you I was stable. Not wildly happy, not miserable, just stable. A steady job, a steady boyfriend, a steady routine. The kind of life people post about with soft smiles and latte art. But stability can feel a lot like invisibility. My name is Susan Winston, and this is the story of how I mistook a man who loved me quietly for one who spoke beautifully, and how I lost everything in the process. Jason and I had been together for 2 years, living together for 8 months in a small apartment that always smelled like his coffee and my lavender laundry detergent. There was comfort in our routines. I'd leave for the office while he settled into his freelance graphic design projects. I'd return in the evening to find him in the exact position I'd left him in, headphones on, fingers tapping the keyboard, brows furrowed in concentration. Sometimes he wouldn't even look up when I walked through the door. "Hey, babe," he'd say, eyes still glued to the screen. Those 2 words had once been enough. At 27, they felt like something I was settling for. And to be fair, Jason wasn't careless. He cooked dinner more nights than I did. He remembered how I took my coffee, kept my favorite creamer stocked even when the store was out, and he had to check 3 different places. He'd slide handwritten notes into my purse before big meetings. But somewhere along the way, the spark faded quietly, slowly, without a fight. Meanwhile, my Instagram feed overflowed with couples on rooftop dates, weekend getaways, candlelit anniversaries, and surprise proposals. Real or staged it all made me glance at my own life and wonder whether comfort had become complacency. Our last date night had been Chinese takeout eaten in silence while we binged another show neither of us cared about. I'd worn a dress that night, new deep green chosen, because I'd hoped he'd look at me the way he used to. He hadn't noticed. "Do you even see me anymore?" I'd asked him, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, hands smoothing the fabric that was suddenly too tight around my ribs. Jason finally swiveled in his chair. "What are you talking about?" "You look great, Susan. You always look great." "That's not what I mean," I said, trying to swallow the thickness in my throat. "When's the last time you actually looked at me? Really looked?" He blinked, confused. "I look at you every day. Why are you upset?" I wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to understand a longing I couldn't quite articulate. Instead, I just said, "Forget it." That moment, small, quiet, but heavy, was the beginning of the end. I didn't know it then. But Tony Martinez did. Tony, my ex from 3 years ago. The hurricane that had torn through my 20s, leaving me dizzy, breathless, and heartbroken. The man who ghosted me for weeks before finally admitting he wasn't ready for something serious. The man I had spent months getting over. So when he suddenly liked one of my Instagram posts, just a sunset photo, captioned, "Feeling grateful but invisible," my stomach tightened. His comment appeared minutes later. "Beautiful view, but the photographer is even more beautiful." I hated the warm rush that spread through me. I hated that it felt like being seen again. 2 days later, a DM popped up. "Tony. Hey, stranger. Read your caption. Made me think about you. How have you been?" I stared at the message for an hour. Literally an hour. Old wounds, old memories, old chemistry, all resurfacing. Finally, I typed back. "Me. Hey, Tony. I'm fine. How are you?" He responded instantly. "Tony, better now that I'm talking to you. I never really apologized for how I ended things. I was an idiot." Apologies, late, soft, warm, are dangerous things. They sound like closure but act like invitations. Jason was in the kitchen making pasta when the next message came. "Tony, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I miss the way you used to laugh around me." I should have deleted it, ignored it, closed the door he'd walked out of years ago. Instead, I let it stay open just a crack. Our conversations were too easy, too natural. He remembered details no one else ever seemed to. The way I liked my tea, my habit of tapping my thumb when I was nervous, the ridiculous playlist I'd made once called Songs to Fix My Life. He made me feel vibrant again, dangerously so. Meanwhile, at home, I found myself resenting Jason for things that had never mattered before. The way he left his shoes by the door, how he always wore the same faded shirts, how he nodded. Sounds good to every suggestion without actually listening. I was morphing into someone I barely recognized. Someone restless, someone ungrateful, someone searching for something shinier. Then Tony started coincidentally showing up everywhere. At my gym, at my favorite coffee shop, even at the bookstore I went to on Sundays. "Crazy running into you," he said one afternoon, smiling that same smile that had once made me forget my name. "Is it?" I asked. He shrugged, grinning. "Maybe I remembered you mentioning this place." He wasn't subtle, but he was attentive, charming, electric. And I was starving for that kind of energy. One Thursday night, without truly planning to, I heard myself say to Jason, "I think we need a break." He froze. A break from what? From us. "I don't think you see me anymore," I whispered. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it again. I saw something flicker in his eyes, hurt, confusion, fear, but it was quiet, contained, controlled. "I love you, Susan," he said softly. "Isn't that enough?" I didn't know how to answer. Love wasn't the problem. I just didn't feel chosen anymore. He inhaled slowly. "Do you want me to stay somewhere else?" His calm acceptance tore at me more than any argument would have. "I'll go to Emily's for a few days," I said, "just to think." Jason nodded, a small, devastating nod. And that was it. No shouting, no slamming doors, no fighting for us. Just goodbye. That night, lying on my best friend's couch, I texted the man who had been filling the cracks in my heart with honey-coated words. "Me, I did it. Jason and I broke up." Tony called immediately. "Good," he murmured, voice warm, triumphant. "I'm proud of you. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are." The way he said it, so certain, so flattering, felt like stepping into sunlight after months in the shade. I didn't realize then that sunlight can blind you long before it burns you. Tony's timing was perfect, too perfect in hindsight. He knew exactly when to step in, exactly when my relationship with Jason had slipped into quiet autopilot, exactly when I was vulnerable enough to mistake attention for affection. The morning after the breakup, he showed up at Emily's apartment with 2 coffees, a box of pastries, and that devastatingly confident smile. The kind of smile that made you forget how badly he'd hurt you once upon a time. "You look exhausted," he murmured, brushing hair gently out of my face as if he had the right. "Last night must have been rough." "More than rough," I admitted. "I don't even know who I am right now." He tilted his head, studying me, like a puzzle only he could solve. "I do," he said softly. "You're the woman who stayed loyal to a man who stopped seeing her. You're the woman who deserves passion, not routine." Words like that shouldn't mean anything, but they did, because they filled cracks I didn't even know I had. For a while, Tony became my oxygen. The early weeks felt like stepping into a movie I'd always wanted to star in. He took me on late-night drives along the river, booked rooftop dinners, where the city looked like it was sparkling just for us, whisked me away for a weekend on the coast, where we watched the sunrise wrapped in a ridiculously soft blanket. He made me feel chosen, seen, alive. Jason never posted about us on social media. Tony. He posted photos of us with captions like, "Finally found what I lost." It was intoxicating, dangerously intoxicating. But even in those dizzying highs, there were moments, fleeting flashes, where something about Tony's intensity felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced these lines on someone else before me. Emily noticed. "He's coming on kind of strong," she said carefully one afternoon. "Are you sure this isn't about you needing comfort after the breakup?" It's not that I insisted too quickly. Tony's different now. She gave me that look, the one only a best friend has earned the right to give. Different men don't repeat the same pattern, Susan. I ignored her, because ignoring her felt easier than questioning him. The shift started subtly. First a canceled dinner, then a rescheduled date, then another. "Work emergency," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "I'll make it up to you." Except he didn't. The morning texts slowed. The late-night calls disappeared entirely. The long, thoughtful messages became short replies like, "Busy RN, talk later." I tried to convince myself it was temporary, that the man who'd swept me off my feet was simply overwhelmed. But unease grew in my chest, tight, suffocating. One night at dinner, just a simple chain restaurant, the kind we'd never gone to before, I finally asked, "Are we okay?" Tony didn't look at me. His thumb hovered above his phone screen. "We're fine," he said. "Why wouldn't we be? You seem distant." He exhaled sharply, finally setting his phone down. "We move fast, Susan. I just don't want to rush into anything serious." My stomach twisted. "You told me we were meant to be." "The timing is good," he said with a shrug. "But that doesn't mean we're jumping into labels." "I left Jason," I whispered. "For you." Tony leaned back. "That was your choice. I never asked you to do that." The casual cruelty of it made the world tilt. But the real blow came 3 days later at one of his company happy hours. A coworker, a cheerful woman named Claire, smiled at me and asked, "So, you and Tony are official now?" "Yeah," I said cautiously. "We are." Her smile faltered. "Oh, that's not what he told us." My heartbeat stuttered. "What do you mean?" "He said you two were just hanging out while he figured out his situation, and that he was still dating around." My mouth went dry. Dating around. Claire's eyes widened. "Wait, you didn't know?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I felt like my ribs were collapsing inward. That night I stood in Tony's apartment doorway with my hands shaking so hard I could barely knock. When he opened the door, he didn't even look guilty. just annoyed. What's your problem? He muttered. How many, I asked, voice barely above a whisper. How many women were you seeing while telling me you missed me? Tony scoffed. You're being dramatic. Tell me. We weren't exclusive, he said flatly. You assumed a lot. You said you were working on yourself, that you realized what you lost. Well, he said with a shrug, I can realize things without committing to them immediately. So you used me, I whispered. You needed attention, he shot back. I gave it to you. That's it. Those words cut deeper than anything Jason had ever said. Deeper than the breakup. Deeper than the loneliness. You were never serious, I said numbly. I was serious enough, he replied. Look, Susan, we can keep seeing each other, but I'm not doing exclusivity right now. I'm not ready to be trapped. Trapped. The word punched the air from my lungs. I wasn't a partner. I was a placeholder. A prize he wanted to win, not a woman he wanted to keep. I'm done, I said quietly. We're done. Tony rolled his eyes. If that's what you want. Of course he didn't fight. People don't fight for things they don't value. And as I walked away from him, the night cold against my skin, the truth settled like a stone in my stomach. I had thrown away a man who loved me, for someone who only wanted to beat him. Regret is a strange kind of ghost. It doesn't haunt loudly. It whispers. It taps on the inside of your ribs. It waits until you're alone, until the noise of the world dies down, and then it curls up beside you and asks, was it worth it? For weeks after ending things with Tony, that question stalked me. At first, I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into work. I stayed at Emily's place longer than I needed to. I made promises to focus on self-care, even though every part of me felt hollow. But nothing filled the silence. And nothing quieted the memory of Jason's face the night I walked out confused, hurt, and still gentle in a way I didn't deserve. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I'd made the right choice. I told myself Tony had been a wake-up call, a reminder that I wasn't meant for a life of lukewarm affection and predictable routines. But the truth was simpler and far more painful. I had burned down my own house because someone else lit a candle for me. It started small, my attempts to reach out to Jason. The first message was short, almost painfully polite. Me, hey, hope you're doing okay. No response. 2 days later, another. Me, I know I don't have the right to ask how you are, but I'm thinking of you. Still nothing. I stared at my phone for hours that day, feeling the weight of my own consequences pressing down on me. Jason had always answered my messages within minutes. Now I was a ghost he refused to acknowledge. The silence hurt more than Tony's rejection ever had. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? Hi, it's Susan, the woman who threw you away for a man who wanted to use me. Call me back. No, I couldn't do that. The worst part, I couldn't blame him. Not even a little. I had walked out without really giving him a chance to fight. I'd chosen validation over loyalty, excitement over stability, attention over love. And Jason, he didn't chase. He didn't beg. He simply let me go. It meant he understood something I didn't. If someone wants to leave you, you let them. 2 weeks of silence eventually pushed me to do the one thing I'd been avoiding. I went to our old apartment. The building looked the same, but I didn't. I felt older, somehow heavier, the kind of heavy that comes from carrying your own mistakes on your back. I stood outside his door, desperately practicing what I'd say. I made a mistake. I chose wrong. I miss you. I love you. None of it felt like enough. When the door finally opened, my breath caught in my throat. Jason looked different. His hair was shorter, styled in a way he'd never bothered with before. He wore a fitted button-up shirt I'd never seen. He looked rested, grounded, sharper somehow. Like a version of himself I hadn't helped nurture, but maybe prevented. Susan, he said, voice calm. Neutral. Hi, I breathed. Can I come in? He hesitated, just for a second. But it was long enough for me to see the truth flashing behind his eyes. He wasn't sure he wanted me back in his life. That hurt more than anything. Finally, he stepped aside. Yeah, okay. The apartment was different, too. Brighter, rearranged, decorated. There were plants, actual plants, new artwork on the walls. The sofa had been moved. The whole space felt lived in. As if Jason had started over. Without me. You look good, I said quietly. Thanks. He gestured for me to sit. What do you need, Susan? Straight to the point. No soft edges. No cushion for the blow he knew was coming. I forced myself to meet his eyes. I made a mistake. He didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't look vindicated. I know, he said simply. That simple acknowledgement broke something inside me. Then, why won't you talk to me? My voice trembled. Why won't you even consider giving us a chance? Jason sat down across from me, hands folded loosely. Because I deserve someone who chooses me the first time. His voice wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter, it was steady, like he'd spent weeks thinking about this, dissecting the pain until he understood it enough to let it go. People make mistakes, I whispered. I made a terrible one. Don't you believe in second chances? I believe in second chances for people who made an honest mistake, he said. You didn't make a mistake, Susan. You made a choice. I felt the words like a knife. He stood up, walked to the window, then turned back to face me. You left because you wanted excitement. You wanted someone who looked at you like a burst of fireworks. You didn't want the steady kind of love I have to give. That's not true. It is, he said gently. You wanted something shinier. And now that it wasn't what you thought, you're here. But I can't be the man you come back to because someone else disappointed you. I love you, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were soft but unshakably sad. I love you too, he said quietly. But I don't trust you. I sobbed, then ugly broken sobs I hadn't planned, hadn't wanted, hadn't been able to stop. Trust can be rebuilt. Not with you, he said, not by me. It was the most final, gentle, devastating thing anyone had ever said to me. So that's it, I choked. 2 years mean nothing. 2 years mean everything, he whispered. That's why I know exactly who you are when someone else makes you feel special. His words didn't come from anger. They came from closure, from acceptance, from a heart that had stopped waiting for me. And as I sat there crying into the silence of the apartment that had once been my home, I realized something I wasn't ready to accept. I hadn't just lost Jason. I'd lost the version of myself he believed in. The weeks after that conversation felt like moving through fog. Heavy, disorienting, full of moments where I'd reach for something, my phone, a thought, a memory, only to realize I no longer had the right to touch any of it. I told myself to give Jason space, to respect his boundaries, to let him heal. But healing is hard when regret gnaws at you like a hunger. At first, I resisted every impulse to reach out. I threw myself into distractions, work errands, favors for Emily, too many coffee runs, too many sleepless nights. I tried deleting old photos, only to restore them from the trash minutes later. I watched movies Jason once loved and turned them off halfway through because hearing the jokes, without hearing his laugh, felt unbearable. But the quiet continued pressing on all sides, and eventually I gave in. I sent emails, long, embarrassingly long ones. Everything I had failed to say before. Everything I wished I had said when we still had a chance. I explained how Tony manipulated me. How I felt invisible even though it wasn't his fault. How I'd mistaken chaos for passion. How losing him clarified everything. I wasn't asking him to take me back. I just wanted him to know I understood what I'd thrown away. Jason never responded. Not once. He didn't block me. He didn't lash out. He didn't tell mutual friends to ignore me. He simply moved forward without me. That in its own way was more painful than anger ever could have been. After 2 months of silence, I learned he'd returned to his old gym, the one we used to go to together. I started showing up at the same time, pretending it was coincidence. Jason was always polite, but he never lingered. Hey, Susan. Hey, how are you? I'm good. It was small talk, stripped of warmth, just enough kindness to be civil, not enough to invite hope. I hated myself for wanting hope anyway. One morning, I waited outside the gym longer than I should have. Snow was falling lightly, settling on the shoulders of my coat. When Jason walked out, he paused beside me. You're freezing, he said, frowning. Do you need a ride? The kindness in his voice nearly undid me. No, I managed. I'm fine. He nodded, hesitated, then walked away. I watched him go, and something inside me cracked all over again. Kindness is cruel when it comes without love. 3 months passed before I heard anything new. Emily walked into my living room one night, holding her phone like it was a grenade. You need to sit down first. My heart dropped. What happened? She exhaled slowly. Jason's seeing someone. For a moment, the world went silent, white noise silent. My ears rang, my vision blurred. Oh, I said, okay. But it wasn't okay. It felt like someone had reached inside my chest and closed their fist around my lungs. Who I asked, barely audible. Her name is Emma, Emily said gently. She's a photographer. I swallowed hard. Is she nice? Emily nodded with a wince. Really nice, actually. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot, too full of air I couldn't breathe. He's happy, Susan, she whispered. Really happy. I nodded, but my body felt like it was made of glass, shattering quietly. I had no right to be jealous, no right to be heartbroken, no right to feel betrayed. Jason owed me nothing. He was doing what I had refused to do when I left him. He was choosing himself. I pretended to move on after that. I went out with friends. I tried dating apps. I even went on a few first dates that ended with polite, I'll text you lies. But no one compared to Jason. Worse, no one compared to the version of me that existed when I was with him. The me who was steady, grounded, trusted, loved. I didn't know how to get her back. Maybe I never could. 6 months after our breakup, our mutual friend Lily got married. Not going felt petty. Going felt unbearable. But I went anyway. I wore a soft navy dress, curled my hair, forced a smile, and kept telling myself, "You can handle this. It's just one night." Walking into the reception hall felt like stepping onto thin ice. And then I saw him. Jason. He looked incredible. Confident. Relaxed. Lighter somehow. Like a man who had finally put down a weight he'd been carrying for too long. Next to him stood a woman, Emma. She was beautiful in an effortless way. Warm brown eyes, soft curls, a smile that radiated ease. She wore a simple champagne dress and looked like she belonged at his side. They walked together as if they'd been doing so for years, not months. I had to look away. But fate is cruel and weddings are small. Eventually we ran into each other near the bar. Susan Jason said quietly. "Hi," I managed. "You look good." "Thanks." He turned slightly. "This is Emma." She extended her hand with a smile. "It's nice to finally meet you. Jason's told me about you." My stomach twisted, but I forced a polite smile. "All good things, I hope." "Just that you two used to date," Jason said simply. Used to date. 3 words that reduced 2 years of my life to a footnote. "You both look happy," I said. "Really?" Emma squeezed his hand, and the soft smile she gave him was more genuine than anything Tony had ever offered me. "We are," she said, and I believed her. Because Jason looked at her the way he used to look at me, except this time the warmth wasn't dimmed by doubt or hesitation. He was free. I didn't belong there, not in his world, not in his future, not in the version of his life where he'd learned to heal without me. So I excused myself and left early, ignoring the DJ's calls for everyone to join the dance floor. Outside, the cool night air hit my lungs like an awakening. I finally understood. Jason hadn't found someone better than me. He had found someone who never made him question whether he was enough. Someone who didn't mistake his quiet love for complacency. Someone who didn't think fireworks were more valuable than warmth. Someone who chose him the first time. And I was the one who taught him to expect that. The night of the wedding stayed with me long after I drove away from the venue. I rolled the window down, letting the wind hit my face as if cold air could erase the burn of seeing Jason genuinely happy with someone who wasn't me. It didn't. Nothing could. I'd always thought heartbreak was loud crying. In the shower, drunk dialing exes, burning old photos. But the worst heartbreak I ever felt was quiet. It was the stillness of sitting alone in my bedroom afterwards, staring at my reflection and realizing I no longer recognized the woman looking back at me. Not because of Jason, but because of what I'd done to myself. I used to think love had to be dramatic to be real, that if it wasn't passion and heat and breathless highs, it meant something was missing. Tony fed that belief so easily with grand gestures, beautiful lines, and a performance convincing enough to make me doubt everything I'd had with Jason. But that wasn't passion. It was chaos, wearing a cologne of charm. And Jason, he was peace. Stability, consistency. A love that didn't need fireworks to prove it existed. I just wasn't ready to appreciate that kind of love, not then anyway. In the months that followed, I tried to rebuild myself, not for Jason, not for Tony, but for me. The me I had abandoned long before I ever abandoned anyone else. I stopped checking Jason's social media, stopped asking Emily for updates, stopped writing unsent messages in my notes app. The world felt bigger, somehow lonelier, but also clearer. I started therapy. Facing truths I'd spent years avoiding felt like peeling back layers of my own skin. I admitted I'd let comparison poison my happiness, that I'd confused comfort with boredom, that I'd let strangers on social media influence what I thought real love should look like, that I mistook validation for affection, that I didn't know how to sit with contentment without craving something louder. Some sessions left me raw and shaking. Others felt like breathing for the first time in years. But slowly, very slowly, I started to understand myself. Not the version Tony flattered, not the version Jason loved, not the version Instagram told me I should be. Me, just me. I learned that love doesn't always look like a movie. Sometimes it looks like routine, like someone making your favorite coffee every morning, like gentle check-ins, like quiet presence, like stability that holds you up instead of leaving you breathless. The kind of love I walked away from. The kind of love I didn't know how to value until it was too late. One chilly evening, nearly a year after everything happened, I passed by the little coffee shop Jason and I used to go to. The windows were fogged with steam-warm yellow light spilling onto the sidewalk. I paused outside, heart thudding for reasons I couldn't name. Then I saw them. Jason and Emma sitting at a corner table laughing at something on his phone. Their heads leaned close, the kind of closeness that only comes with comfort and ease. Emma reached out and brushed something off his cheek. Jason caught her hand and kissed her knuckles. My chest ached, but not with jealousy, with understanding. He was exactly where he should be, with someone who saw him clearly, from the beginning, without needing a contrast or a wake-up call or a dramatic catalyst. I only stayed for a moment, long enough to feel something settle inside me. Closure, maybe, or acceptance, or both. I didn't go inside. I didn't want to intrude on the life I no longer had any claim to. Instead, I turned and walked away, my steps steady, the winter air crisp against my cheeks. That night, lying in bed, I thought again about the line Tony used to lure me away. You deserve better. He was wrong. Jason deserved better, and he found it. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man I abandoned rebuilt himself healed and chose someone who chose him back without hesitation or conditions. Meanwhile, Tony. His Instagram feed eventually returned to its usual cycle: new women, new captions, new declarations of self-growth that meant nothing. The same patterns repeating with different faces. He had won the game he was playing. But games don't build futures. Jason had built one, with someone else, and I was finally okay with that. People say the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but they forget to mention the most painful truth. Sometimes the grass on your side was already perfect, and you didn't water it. Sometimes you confuse boredom with complacency, comfort with stagnation, stability with invisibility. Sometimes you lose someone good because you mistake peace for lack of passion. I didn't lose Jason because Tony was better. I lost Jason because I didn't know how to appreciate the kind of love that stays. The kind that grows. The kind that lasts. The kind that doesn't need an audience to feel real. Now I'm learning that the real work isn't finding someone new. It's rebuilding yourself into someone who won't run when love becomes quiet. Someone who can recognize what's real before it's gone. Someone who knows the difference between being seen and being valued. And maybe someday when I'm ready, the right person will come along. Someone steady, someone